The classroom smelled like disinfectant and burned coffee. Dr. Rowan Hale stood at the front with a curved needle in her hand and a strip of synthetic skin clipped to a board. Under the fluorescent lights, her fingers looked almost pale against the tan plastic, but they moved with calm precision. In, out, not. Each interrupted stitch sat exactly the same distance from the last, a neat little line marching across the wound. 20-something recruits watched from rows of metal desks. Some sat back with their arms crossed. A few leaned forward, notebooks already crowded with small block letters. One guy in the second row chewed his pen cap like it was the only thing keeping him awake. Rowan did not raise her voice. She just kept talking while she worked. In the field, you are not sewing a shirt, she said. You are buying time. Every stitch is a little piece of time where their body stays closed and their blood stays inside. There was a murmur of half-bored amusement. They were still thinking of this as training, not as something that might one day be the last reason someone got to see their family again. She finished the final knot and let the needle holder hang loose from the suture thread. The line of stitches was unremarkable and perfect. She snipped the ends clean. The door opened behind her without a knock. No one needed to turn to know who it was. The room straightened on instinct. Even the guy chewing his pen swallowed the plastic. "Contractor Hale," a man's voice said. Rowan set the needle holder down beside the fake skin before she turned. Deputy Director Samuel Reddick stood in the doorway in a charcoal suit tablet tucked under his arm, his ID badge gleaming against his tie. He had the kind of presence that came from years of being the highest-ranking person in most rooms. His expression was already set in something that looked polite but felt like a verdict. "Not doctor," he added, as if anyone had made that mistake out loud. Rowan laced her fingers in front of her, so he would not see how tightly she wanted to grip something. "Sir," she said. Reddick walked to the front without asking, stepping into the thin strip of space between her and the recruits. For a moment they stood almost shoulder to shoulder. From this close, she could see the faint pulse in his jaw where he clenched it. He glanced at the board at the neat row of interrupted stitches, then tapped his tablet awake with one finger. "I have been reviewing your curriculum," he said, voice carrying just enough to fill the room. "You are still teaching interrupted sutures for field closure." "Yes, sir," Rowan said. She kept her tone neutral, professional. She could feel 20 pairs of eyes flicking between them. "We have moved to continuous suturing protocols," Reddick went on. "Faster closure, less material, consistent with current medical literature." He turned away from her, facing the recruits, now the tablet held like a prop. "The Bureau updates its methods based on evidence and legal constraints," he said. "Not personal preference, not outdated war stories." Someone in the back shifted chair, scraping softly against the floor. "In a controlled setting," Rowan said, "continuous sutures are fine. In a dusty warehouse with poor light and people stepping on your patient, they fail if the line is compromised." She could feel the room tighten a little. No one moved, but bodies always told on themselves. Reddick did not look at her. "Are you challenging Bureau protocol, Contractor Hale?" She felt the question like a hand on the back of her neck. Her pulse did not change. She had seen men die in dirt and fluorescent light. A deputy director in a clean shirt was not going to shake her. "I am providing context from practical application," she said. He turned his head then just enough for their eyes to meet. His were a flat gray, unreadable. Hers were calm because they had to be. He swiped his thumb across the tablet. The screen reflected faintly in his glasses. "For context," he said, addressing the room again. Contractor Hale was separated from Army service under less than ideal circumstances. Her record reflects a pattern of improvisation and disregard for command structure. The word improvisation hung there like a charge. "The Bureau," Reddick continued, "relies on institutional knowledge, on protocols developed by teams of medical professionals who understand operational liability." He let that sit. 3 recruits in the middle row exchanged quick glances. A woman in the front lowered her eyes to her notes. Rowan did not defend herself. Her hands stayed at her sides. She had learned years ago that sometimes silence carried more weight than anything she could say. Reddick walked back toward the door, still speaking to the class. "You are here to learn how to operate within a system," he said. "You are not here to reinvent it." His hand closed on the doorframe. He looked back over his shoulder, and this time he spoke only to her. "Stick to the approved curriculum. If you cannot stay inside the lines, we will find someone who can." The door closed quietly. For a few seconds, the only sound was the hum of the lights and the soft metallic click as the needle holder on the board swung and settled. A hand went up in the back. Rowan looked toward the movement. The guy was broad-shouldered, early 30s, hair cut close, still carrying a little of an enlisted posture. His name tag read Collins. "Ma'am," Nate Collins said, If continuous is faster, why do interrupted sutures matter in the field? Rowan picked up the board with the synthetic skin and carried it a little closer so they could see. Because speed only counts if the closure stays intact, she said. She picked up another strip from the tray, this one stitched with a continuous running line. Under the overhead lights, the nylon glinted. In a clean hospital with monitors and a full team, this works, she said. Now imagine you are on a concrete floor in a busted warehouse. It is raining through the roof. Someone drags your patient by the vest. She pinched one part of the continuous line with forceps and gave it a steady pull. The tension traveled. The whole line loosened and gaped. If one segment fails, the whole thing opens, she said. She set that piece down and lifted her interrupted sample. Each stitch was tied off individually. She hooked one and pulled harder this time. The knot tore free, leaving a small gap. The rest held. With interrupted sutures, each knot is its own insurance policy, Reshipidad. You might lose one. You do not lose all of them. It takes 90 seconds longer. 90 seconds is worth it. Someone exhaled slowly through their teeth. Pens started moving again. A woman in the second row raised her hand. Dark hair in a tight bun, sharp eyes tag reading Ruiz. Where did you serve, ma'am? Tessa Ruiz asked. Rowan set the boards back down. Sangar Outpost, she said. Afghanistan, 3 tours. Another voice from the left side. What happened? A recruit asked. The tag on his chest said Hall. His tone carried more curiosity than malice, but the room leaned with him. Rowan paused. It was only half a beat, but silence has its own weight. I disobeyed a direct evacuation order during an operation, she said. Stayed behind to treat a local interpreter who was hit while covering our retreat. She kept her eyes on them, not on the floor, not on the wall. Command decided the risk to the mission outweighed one life, she went on. I calculated differently. Did he live? Nate asked. Yes, Rowan said. And they tossed you for it, Tessa said. She did not sound surprised, only verifying. Dishonorable discharge, Rowan said. Yeah, that settled over the room. Some of them had probably already read the sanitized version of her file. Hearing it in her voice made it real. Nate leaned forward, arms on his desk. Des? Would you do it again? He asked. Rowan began putting the instruments back into the tray. Needle holders, forceps, scissors. Each tool returned to its slot with a soft metallic sound. Her hands were steady. Every time, she said. She closed the lid on the tray. You learn protocols because that is your starting point, she said. They are not the person bleeding in front of you. She checked the wall clock out of habit. 10 minutes left in the block. Practice interrupted sutures on your pads tonight, she said. I will check your spacing tomorrow. Chairs scraped as the recruit stood and started filing out. A few nodded as they passed her. Most did not meet her eye, not yet. Nate lingered near the front with Tessa at his shoulder. That was solid, ma'am, he said, offering his hand. Rowan shook it briefly. His grip was firm but respectful. You will need more than solid if you end up on entry teams, she said. That is the plan, he said. Tessa gave a small, crooked smile. For what it's worth, she said, half the class thinks Reddick has not been in a real stack in 15 years. The other half thinks you are a walking IA complaint. Rowan felt something like a smile press against the back of her teeth. Both can be true, she said. They laughed and left. The door closed behind them and the room went back to humming lights and empty chairs. Rowan rolled up her left sleeve. The air on her forearm felt cool after the heat trapped in the fabric. A small tattoo sat just below the bend of her elbow, a simple scroll with block letters that read RLTW. Below it, in smaller script, a single word in Dari, Zinda. Alive. She traced it once with her thumb. Habit, not ritual. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She wiped her hand on her pant leg and picked it up. Unknown number, Quantico area code. The text preview read, Reddick filed a formal complaint about your teaching methods. Need to talk. My office at 1600. The signature line had a name she already knew. Marianne Cole, MD Director Medical Programs, Federal Tactical Response Academy. Rowan checked the clock again. She had 40 minutes. She shut off the lights, let the door lock behind her, and walked into the hallway. The main corridor of the academy building was lined with framed photographs. Graduating classes in crisp shirts, their faces open in sure rows of them going back decades. She walked past group after group and did not slow down. At the far end, a frosted glass panel held black lettering, Medical Director. She knocked once lightly. Come in, Dr. Cole called. Rowan stepped into an office that smelled faintly of paper and citrus cleaner. A window looked out over the outdoor training grounds where tiny figures ran formations between concrete barriers. Marianne Cole sat behind a desk, crowded with files and one neatly placed coffee mug. Her hair was threaded with gray, pulled back at the nape of her neck. Reading glasses rested low on her nose as she studied a manila folder. "Close the door, please," she said. Rowan did. The click seemed louder than it should have. "Sit," Cole said. Rowan sat in the chair across from the desk, hands folded loosely in her lap. Cole took off her glasses and set them down on top of the folder. "Reddick sent a 3-page memo about you," she said. "He says you are undermining Bureau protocol, encouraging recruits to question command and operating outside your contract." Rowan waited. The trained part of her brain counted her own breaths. "Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. "I watched the feed from your class," Cole said, "and I talked to some of your trainees." She opened another file and flipped a few pages. "Colin says your field stuff is the first time this place has felt real," she said. "Ruiz says she finally understands tissue tension because of the way you showed it." She closed the file. "They also said you do not sugarcoat anything." Rowan met her eyes. "Is that a problem?" Rowan asked. "It is when you do it in front of Reddick," Cole said. She stood and walked to the window. Outside, a group of recruits in helmets were practicing bounding overwatch, their movements small and precise from this height. "You made him look foolish," Cole said. "He's not going to forget that." "He chose his own words," Rowan said. "I just did my job." "This place is not a forward surgical unit," Cole said. "It is a federal academy. There are politics here." Rowan watched the side of Cole's face, the way her jaw tightened a little when she said politics. "I did not come here to make friends, Dr. Cole," Rowan said. "Then why did you come?" Cole asked. Rowan looked down at her hands. The calluses were softer than they had been in Afghanistan, but the faint lines of old scars still crossed her fingers. "I wanted to see if I could still do medicine without watching people die every week," she said. Cole was quiet for a moment. "Reddick has clout," she said at last. "I can push back on this complaint. If he escalates it to the director, I may not be able to shield you." "I'm not asking you to," Rowan said. "I know," Cole said. "That is part of the problem." She walked back to the desk and picked up a thin folder different from the one with the complaint. She slid it across to Rowan. "Live exercise next week," Cole said. "Multi-agency full tactical run, Red Ridge Steel Plant outside Denver, hostage scenario." Rowan opened the folder. Black and white diagrams of the plant's floor plan filled the pages. Steel walkways, stairwells, access points. Someone had annotated it with colored markers. She flipped to the medical logistics page and her eyes stopped. "No field intubation kit listed. Medivac ETA 12 minutes. She frowned. 12 minutes is an eternity with a crushed airway, she said. "The protocol assumes basic stabilization until transport," Cole said. "Oxygen jaw thrust positional." "And if that is not enough?" Rowan asked. Cole tapped a finger once against the desk. "Then the scenario gets adjusted," she said. "It is training, variables are controlled." Rowan closed the folder. "Concrete does not care about scenarios," she said. Cole's mouth tightened, but she did not disagree. "You will be in the command truck as medical observer, you see." Cole said. "That is already written into the op plan. You do not go into the structure. Reddick was explicit." Rowan looked back down at the map. Thin lines of catwalks crossed over the main floor. In one corner, someone had circled a rusted stairwell and written "Watch Load" in red pen. "Is that clear, Cole?" Cole asked. "Yes, ma'am," Rowan said. Cole sat back in her chair watching her. "Try not to give him another reason to come after you," Cole said. Rowan stood the folder still in her hands. "I will be in the truck," she said. She stepped out into the hallway. The light there felt colder than when she had walked in. She looked down at the diagram of the steel plant again, at the narrow lines of stairs and the blank spaces where air would rush in if anything gave way. In the margin, someone had written one more note in small letters. "Medivac 12 minutes." Rowan read it twice, then closed the folder and started back down the corridor toward the stairs. Rowan took the stairs instead of the elevator, the folder tucked under her arm. She could feel the thick paper edge pressing against her ribs through the fabric of her shirt, a quiet reminder of 12-minute promises. On the ground floor, the hallway opened into the main commons. Voices bounced off painted cinder block. Somewhere, a microwave beeped. The academy commissary sat off to the side, glass door propped open with a folded chair, the smell of cheap coffee and reheated food spilling into the corridor. She meant to walk past. Her plan was to go back to the classroom, lock the door, and lay the plant diagrams out flat, where she could stare at them without anyone watching her face. Doc, hey, Hale. Nate Collins stood from a corner table tray in hand. He had taken his jacket off and rolled his sleeves tattoos just visible along his forearms. Tessa Ruiz sat beside him with a paper cup, and Eric Park occupied the far chair, hunched over a pile of printed handouts. Rowan stopped at the doorway. "We will not keep you long," Nate said. "Couple of questions about Redridge if you have a minute." She did not want to talk about Redridge in a room this bright with people walking past, but she had opened her mouth and what came out was, "A minute." She crossed to their table. The plastic chair creaked as she sat. Eric slid a printed-out plan across the surface. Someone had highlighted the medevac line in fluorescent yellow. "These times," he said, "they account for everything going right. Clear airbird already in the sky, no other calls. And if there is a storm cell over Denver," Tessa added quietly, "or they are diverted." "Then 12 turns into 25, Eric said. Rowan scanned the highlighted section, even though she knew the wording already. "Your job out there is not to fix everything on the street," she said. "You stabilize and hand off." Nate nodded slowly. "Right," he said. "We get that. But say there is a crush injury to the neck, or thermal damage. Say basic airway tricks are not enough." He did not say the word cricothyrotomy. He did not have to. All three watched her with the same steady attention, like people standing at the edge of a drop and trying to see how far down it went. "In that case," Rowan said, "you have about 4 minutes of useful brain time before things start to shut down. Maybe 5 if they started with a good reserve." Tessa stared at the plan instead of at Rowan. "The protocol says head tilt, jaw, thrust, bag valve mask if available," Tessa said. "It does not say anything about cutting a hole in someone's throat." "No," Rowan said. Silence settled between the coffee cups and crumpled napkins. Behind them, the line at the counter moved, the soft hiss of the espresso machine, a small, steady sound. Nate leaned in, forearms on the table. "You know how to do it," he said. It was not a question. Rowan let her eyes drop to his hands. Thick fingers scar on one knuckle, a cheap plastic watch on his wrist. Hands that could break something by accident or thread a needle if someone took the time to show him how. She heard herself exhale. "Why are you asking me?" she said. "Because they did not teach it in MedBlock," Eric said. "Because the kit does not include the gear and the op plan pretends we will not need it. Because we trust you more than a paragraph in a protocol manual." Tessa did look up then. Her eyes were steady and dark. "If something goes wrong at Red Ridge," she said, "I would rather hear you in my head than Reddick." Rowan felt a familiar tension slide under her skin. It was not anger, not exactly. More like awareness, like an alarm had started beeping somewhere inside and she was deciding what to do about it. 6 in the morning, she said. "Medical training bay. Bring your kits. Do not sign into any system. Do not talk about it in the halls." Nate sat back, breath leaving him all at once. "Yes, ma'am," he said. Rowan stood. Her coffee had gone cold before she ever touched it. She left the commissary with the folder tighter under her arm and a new line drawn somewhere she could not see but felt all the same. The next morning, the sky over Aurora was a flat slate color, low clouds pressing down on the campus. The heating system in the training bay had not caught up yet. The air inside bit at exposed skin. Rowan unlocked the door at 5:45 and flicked on the lights. The room blinked to life in segments, one row of fixtures, then the next. Stainless steel tables, racks of plastic torsos and limbs, open cabinets lined with neatly stacked gauze and bandages. She set her duffel on the nearest table and unzipped it. Inside foam blocks cradled a row of synthetic neck models, each molded with the subtle ridges of cartilage beneath artificial skin. By the time the wall clock read 5:58, footsteps sounded in the hall. Nate came in first, then Tessa, then Eric, then 3 more recruits, Rowan recognized only in passing from the earlier class. They were quiet in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. All wore academy sweats and boots, hair pulled back, faces bare. Rowan did not waste breath on a welcome. "Cricothyrotomy," she said. "Emergency surgical airway. You do it when they cannot breathe and you cannot intubate." She placed a neck model in front of each recruit. "You will have between 60 and 90 seconds before they lose the light," she said. "No second attempt, no redo. If you mess it up, they do not get a chance at the hospital." She stepped to the table closest to her. The neck felt cool and rubbery under her fingers. She placed her left hand on top, the pad of her thumb pressing gently. "Find your landmarks," she said. "Thyroid cartilage, cricothyroid membrane, cricoid cartilage." She moved her fingers in turn slow enough for them to see. "You do not find these with your eyes," she said. "You find them with your hands. In dirty water, in the back of a moving truck, in a stairwell while someone is screaming in your ear." Nate traced the model in front of him, brow furrowed. How do you know you're not about to stab the wrong thing? He asked. Practice, Rowan said. Repetition. The distance between these points becomes something you could draw with your eyes closed. She handed out plastic scalpels, the blades dull enough to be safe on synthetic material, but still capable of cutting. In the field you use what you have, Shikaz, she said. Scalpel if you are lucky, knife if you are not. I once used a piece of broken bottle. Eric glanced up sharply. Afghanistan, he asked. Helmand, she said. Roadside bomb. The medic went down. The kid who took the brunt of it could not breathe through his face anymore. We did not have time to argue about scope of practice. She did not elaborate. She did not need to. The room went even quieter. You are not trying to be pretty, she said. You are trying to make a hole the right size in the right place. She showed them the motion. Horizontal cut 1 centimeter through simulated skin and membrane. Her hand did not hesitate. There was a soft tearing sound as the blade went through the final layer. She slid a hollow tube into the opening and secured it with tape. You then check for air, Bakash, she said. Hand on the chest cheek near their mouth. You listen and feel. If the chest moves, you are in. If it does not, and they are still fighting for air, you have seconds to figure out why. She stepped back. Do it, she said. I will time you. They started awkwardly. Plastic blades in shaky hands, fingers fumbling for invisible landmarks. Nate went first and cut a little too deep, the tip of the blade scraping the model. Tessa hit the right spot but took almost 2 minutes. One of the quieter recruits, Chen, froze with the scalpel hovering above the neck. Rowan stepped behind him and placed her hand lightly over his, guiding his fingers to the right ridge. Hesitation is fear that does not know what it can do yet, she said. Cut. He did. The rubber split. Air hissed softly through the training tube. Again, Rowan said. They went through it a second time, then a third. By the 4th repetition, Nate had shortened his time by nearly half. Tessa moved with clean economy, her eyes almost closed as she felt for the membrane. Chen still shook, but his cuts were no longer wandering. At 7:15, the door opened with a soft hydraulic whine. Dr. Cole stood in the doorway, tablet in hand. Her gaze took in the neck models, the scattered packaging, the recruits in a rough half circle with scalpels in their hands. No one spoke. Cole's eye settled on Rowan. Contractor Hale, she said. A word. Rowan set her scalpel down on the tray and nodded once at the recruits. Keep going, she said. Swap models between you. Do not talk yourselves out of it. She followed Cole into the hallway, closing the door behind her. The corridor was empty. The soundproofing was good enough that the room behind them might as well have been another building. Cole kept her voice low. Reddick called me 20 minutes ago, she said. Someone mentioned you were running unscheduled sessions. Rowan leaned back against the cool wall. They asked, she said. That is not the point, Cole said. You are teaching a procedure that is not in the approved curriculum, the one Reddick spent the last 6 months helping write. He will call this insubordination and a liability. Rowan looked through the narrow window in the door. Inside, Tessa was correcting Chen's grip, her fingers repositioning his hand on the model with more confidence than she had showed a week ago. They will be in that steel plant with or without this, Rowan said. If something collapses and a throat is crushed, pretending this does not exist will not protect anybody. Cole watched her for a long second. You are doing exactly what he is waiting for, Cole said. He wants a pattern. He wants to take that memo and add this to it and walk it upstairs wrapped in a bow. Then he can, Rowan said. I am not the one who has to tell their families we had the knowledge and chose not to use it. Cole closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. I am not your enemy, she said. I know, Rowan said. Cole exhaled the sound more tired than angry. He is escalating this to the academy director, she said. After Redridge, he wants your behavior on the record when things are real and everyone is watching. Rowan straightened off the wall. So he is waiting for me to fail, she said. He is waiting for you to prove the story he already wrote about you, Cole said. She pushed off the wall and walked away, tablet pressed against her chest. Rowan watched her go, then stepped back into the training bay. 6 sets of eyes swung toward her. Are we in trouble? Chen asked. Only if you stop practicing, Rowan said. A nervous laugh bubbled up from somewhere near the back. We keep at it until all of you can do this in your sleep, she said. Then we will see how much trouble it is worth. They stayed another hour. By the time she dismissed them, everyone in the room could complete a passable cut and tube in under 70 seconds. Tessa hit 48 once. Nate grinned at his own 51 and then flushed when she caught him at it. Rowan packed the equipment back into her duffel with the same care she used for live tools. Each model went back into its slot. Each empty blade wrapper went into the trash. Her phone sat face down on the corner of the table screen, dark. As she zipped the bag, Tessa spoke. "Why are you risking this for us?" she asked. Rowan paused. "Someone risked it for me once," she said. "First deployment, Ranger took shrapnel to the neck. I froze. The senior medic grabbed my hand, put it where it needed to be, and talked me through the cut while the guy was turning blue." "Did he make it?" Nate asked. "Yes," Rowan said. 67 seconds that felt like an hour. She slung the duffel over her shoulder. "The medic told me something after," she said. "He said you train until the part of you that knows what to do speaks louder than the part that is afraid." She left them with the smell of antiseptic and plastic in the air and the sound of their own breathing filling the room. Out in the hallway, she checked her phone. A new text waited on the lock screen from an unknown number with a bureau tag. "This is Special Agent Daniel Ortiz, Counterterrorism. I would like to speak with you about your service record. Are you available this afternoon?" Rowan stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the glass. She typed one word. "Why?" The reply came back almost immediately. "Because I know what really happened at Sangur, and I do not think you were the one who should have paid for it." Her pulse ticked a little faster. She looked at the clock. 10:20. She sent him a time and a room number. The conference room on the 3rd floor had no windows. The air felt trapped the way it always did in spaces designed for classified conversations. A single carafe of coffee sat on the sideboard, half full and lukewarm. Ortiz was already there when she walked in. Early 40s, dark hair, cut short tie, slightly loosened like he had been living in this building for years. He stood when she entered. "Dr. Hale," he said, "thank you for making time." "Special Agent Ortiz," she said. They sat the long table between them. He opened a slim laptop and spun it so the screen faced her. The document on it was heavily redacted, thick black bars cutting through paragraphs, but the headings and timestamps were still visible. "That is the full after-action package from Operation Lionsgate," he said. "Not the version legal drafted for your discharge board, the one that stayed in our system." Rowan's throat felt dry. "In your official record," Ortiz said, "the interpreter is a line item, local asset non-critical. Your refusal to leave is framed purely as insubordination." He tapped a key. The document scrolled to a section marked Intelligence Exploitation. "In reality, Fareed Naveed had been providing us with route patterns for a network of bomb makers," Ortiz said. "He survived because you stayed. We rolled up 3 of his targets within 2 weeks. One of them had a map of a convoy route with the word fun written on it." Rowan watched the cursor blink in the center of the screen. "The decision to pull you out was flagged later as an operational failure," Ortiz said. "Your commanding officer was transferred to a training post in Kansas, quietly. Your name is the one on the dishonorable discharge." He closed the laptop. "Why are you showing me this?" Rowan said. "Because people in this building see the word insubordination in your file and stop reading," Ortiz said. "They do not see the part where your judgment saved lives on paper as well as in blood." He leaned back, hands flat on the table. "And because Deputy Director Reddick does not like what he cannot control," Ortiz said. "He is building a narrative. I have seen that pattern before." Rowan let her hands rest on her thighs so he would not see them curl. "You think he planned Red Ridge that way?" she said. "I think he planned your position in it," Ortiz said. "Observer only, no gear, no authority. If anything goes wrong, he will make sure you are either ineffective or insubordinate." He slid a card across the table. "If what actually happens on that floor does not match what ends up in his report," he said, "call me. I have access to the feeds. Body cams, building cams, radio logs." Rowan looked at the card but did not pick it up. "You think there will be something worth calling about," she said. "I think old steel plants have a way of surprising people," Ortiz said. "And I think you have a habit of stepping over lines when someone is dying on the wrong side of them." He stood. "Thank you for hearing me out," he said. After he left, the room felt even smaller. Rowan sat a while longer, the card between her fingers. The print pressed faintly into her skin. Her phone buzzed. "Nate." Exercise briefing moved up. Tomorrow at 0900 instead of Thursday. Reddick is running it. She closed her eyes for a moment, then slipped Ortiz's card into her pocket and stood. The next morning, the briefing room felt smaller than it had the week before. Rows of chairs faced a wall of screens. The largest display showed an overhead image of Red Ridge Steel Plant, a gray tangle of rusted roofs and broken skylights surrounded by snow-dusted scrub. Other screens held floor plans and personnel lists. The air smelled like dry marker and the faint wax of recently cleaned floors. Rowan took a seat near the back. She set a notepad on the fold-out arm but did not uncap her pen. Deputy Director Reddick stood at the front in shirt sleeves and tie jacket folded neatly over a chair. His tablet sat on the lectern, connected to the screens. He waited until the last late arrival took a seat before tapping the display. Red Ridge Live Exercise Method. Who said simulated hostage rescue in a decommissioned steel plant 30 miles outside Denver. Full tactical deployment. Real weapons, live ammunition, blank loads for role players only. The main screen zoomed into the building's schematic white lines tracing hallways and stairwells. Alpha entry at the south loading bay, Reddick said. Bravo containment at the east door. Sniper overwatch on the ridge. Hostile contacts will be played by instructors. 2 hostages, second-story control room, far side of the main floor. He touched the tablet again. The diagram shifted to a medical logistics slide. Even from the back, Rowan recognized the same words she had read in Cole's office. Medical support, Reddick said. Medevac staged at Buckley. Estimated response time from call to wheels down 12 minutes. Ground transport as secondary option 18 to the trauma center. He looked up from the tablet and let his gaze move over the room. All medical contractors will remain at the command vehicle. Yes, he said. Their role is to monitor vitals from remote feeds and support post-exercise evaluation. They do not enter the structure without explicit authorization from tactical command. His eyes found Rowan. For a moment they held. No exceptions, he said. A murmur rolled across the room like wind through tall grass. Chairs creaked. Someone cleared their throat. Nate Collins raised his hand. Reddick's mouth thinned, but he nodded. Agent Collins, he said. Whoa. Yes, he said. If an agent inside takes a hit to the chest and starts losing their airway, Nate said, what exactly is the protocol while we wait for the bird from Buckley? Basic airway management and hemorrhage control, Reddick said. Head tilt, jaw thrust, nasopharyngeal adjuncts if available. You have been trained on those. And if the airway is structurally compromised, Nate said. He kept his tone level, but his hands were tightly laced together in his lap. If that does not work, Reddick did not look at Rowan when he answered. This is a controlled training environment, he said. We do not design exercises that require catastrophic medical interventions. Tessa lifted her hand. He hesitated, then pointed at her. Agent Ruiz. With respect, sir, Tessa said. Concrete stairs collapse in controlled environments, too. A small ripple of suppressed laughter moved through the room, then died. Reddick's jaw shifted. If there is an unforeseen medical escalation, he said, the exercise will be halted. Medevacs will land. You will stand down and allow trained flight medics to assume care. On the screen, the bullet points looked clean and unarguable. Rowan watched the back of Reddick's neck. A small pulse beat at the base of his skull just visible above his collar. Any other questions, he asked. No one raised a hand. Good, he said. Step off is at 0800 tomorrow. Staging area brief at 6:30. Make sure your gear is squared away. We do not need heroics. The last line hung there for a second. No one looked at Rowan, but she could feel the thought of it moving through the room. The briefing broke up into clusters of quiet talk. Papers rustled. Boots thudded on the floor. Nate and Tessa waited near the aisle until Rowan passed. He boxed you out, Nate said under his breath. That is his job, Rowan said. Is it? Tessa asked. Rowan did not answer that. She did not trust the shape the words might take. If someone goes down and I'm 30 yards away in a truck, she said instead, it means you know what to do until someone with more tools gets there. Their faces told her that felt like a thin promise. After they walked off, Rowan stayed in her seat for another minute, listening to the faint echo of conversation fade down the hall. The day before the exercise passed in fragments. Gear checks, an updated weather report on the network monitor, a short-clipped conversation with Cole about transport routes and comms channels. The plant diagram stayed in Rowan's bag, the edges beginning to fray from handling. On the morning of the operation, she drove out to Red Ridge in convoy with 2 Academy vehicles. The sky over the foothills was the color of cold ash. The steel plant rose out of the scrub like a rusted ship run aground its broken windows' dark eyes. The staging area sat in a gravel lot south of the main structure. Command truck medic trailers, a line of the marked SUVs. The generators hummed. Radios crackled. The air tasted like exhaust and the sharp bite of winter. Rowan pulled on a tactical vest marked medical in reflective letters across the back. Her badge hung at her chest. She carried her field kit to the command truck and climbed inside. The interior was cramped and warm. Racks of monitors lined one wall, each tuned to a different body camera. A larger central screen showed an overhead drone feed the plant framed like a diagram come to life. The radio console blinked with colored lights. Patterson sat on the narrow bench opposite the screens, a clipboard balanced on his knee. He looked up as she entered, his glasses crooked on his nose. "Morning," he said. "Morning," Rowan said. She set her kit in an open slot under the bench and sat. The headset felt heavier than it should as she pulled it on. "First time at one of these," Patterson said. "At this academy, Rowan said. He made a small approving sound. "They mostly go clean," he said. "Some scrapes, maybe a twisted ankle. Good for stress inoculation." Rowan watched a feed from Nate's camera as he checked his rifle and tugged at the straps on his plate carrier. The view tilted as he nodded at someone off screen, then steadied again. "Alpha Team comms check," a voice said in her headset. "Alpha 1 copy. Alpha 2 copy." Tessa's voice came through steady. "Bravo Team check. Bravo 1 copy." They finished weapons checks, radio checks, hand signals. The op lead talked them through routes one more time. Reddick's voice joined the traffic, calm and measured. "All units, this is command," and he said, "Exercise goes live on my mark." The drone feed showed Alpha moving into position at the south loading bay. Bravo circled toward the east side shadows breaking from the cover of concrete barriers. Rowan glanced at the digital clock taped above the screens. The numbers rolled to 080. "Mark," Reddick said. Alpha flowed through the loading bay doors in a smooth stack angles of rifles and shoulders. Flashlights swept over old pallets and coiled chains. Dust motes turned in the beams. "Alpha 1 inside," Nate said. "Clear on 1. His body cam showed the ground floor. Rusted support beams, oil stains on the concrete, a stack of abandoned barrels that had once held something no one wanted to think about. "Bravo," said at east, came over the net. No movement outside. The first 10 minutes unfolded like a training video. Teams cleared rooms and hallways, voices low and controlled. Hostile role players shouted on cue and got taken down with paint rounds. Someone laughed once when a flashbang went off in the wrong corner and startled a stray pigeon into flight. Rowan watched Hartley's feed as he led Alpha toward a narrow metal stairwell heading up to the catwalk level. The steps were bare and rusted. A hand-painted sign on the wall nearby read, "Watch your step," in flaking black letters. Hartley's gloved hand slid along the railing as he climbed. The first noise was a high, sharp screech of metal. The next was a deep groan that Rowan felt in her chest more than heard in her ears. "Hold," Hartley said. On his camera, the world lurched. The stair treads dropped out of frame. The image spun in a wash of rust and concrete dust. The audio filled with shouts and the heavy crash of something massive hitting something else. The monitors in the truck flickered as cameras fought to stabilize. "Alpha report," Reddick snapped. Coughing came over the channel. A choking cloud on Nate's feed made the edges of his view hazy brown. He swept his camera left and right. "Alpha 2, Nate said, breath rough. "We had a collapse. Stairwell came out from under us." "Status," Reddick said. "We have 3 down," Nate said. "Hartley is pinned. Ruiz has a leg injury. Park is out, maybe concussion." Rowan leaned forward, eyes on Hartley's feed. The image steadied. He was on his back, one arm trapped, the other free. A length of steel beam lay across his chest, pinning him from shoulder to hip. Dust coated his face, turning it a flat pale, his lips already starting to tint. "Try to lift that beam," someone said off camera. "On 3. Hartley drew a breath that sounded wrong, wet, shallow. They counted. The beam shifted a fraction of an inch. Not enough. Rowan watched his chest. The left side rose with each attempt at breath. The right barely moved. The skin at his throat tugged inward. His words came out clipped. "Cannot," he said. "Get air." Rowan spoke before she knew she had decided to. "Command, this is medical," she said. "Hartley is showing signs of tension, pneumothorax. Collapsed lung pressure building in the chest cavity." "Medical stay on observation," Reddick said. "Medevacs are en route." "Ide," Rowan said. There was a beat. 12 minutes, the air controller answered. Hartley's hand fumbled at his chest. His fingers clawed at his vest like there might be room to pull the air in if he could just find it. "He does not have 12 minutes, Rowan said. "He has 2 or 3 before his heart stops." Patterson glanced at her, then at the screens. "They will handle it when they land," he said. "Needle decompression chest tube, standard." Hartley's lips had gone a dusky blue. His eyes were wider now, a little wild. "Alpha 2, Nate said from somewhere out of frame. "His breaths are shallow. Pulse is thready. He is not tracking." "Get him as stable as you can," Reddick said. "Oxygen, position him. Do not attempt invasive interventions. That is an order." Rowan took the headset off and let it hang around her neck. The room went muffled, only the faint buzz of the electronics and Patterson's pen scratching on his clipboard. She stood. "What are you doing?" Patterson asked. She did not answer him. She grabbed her field kit from under the bench and moved toward the door. Reddick was already outside on the gravel when she stepped down from the truck. His tie was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled to the forearms. The cold air had put color in his cheeks. "Get back in the truck, Hale," he said. "Agent Hartley is going into respiratory failure," Rowan said. "He has a tension tumo. If I do not decompress his chest, he dies." "Medevacs are 8 minutes out," Reddick said. "This is a training incident, not a war zone. We do not freelance." "He will be dead 6 minutes before they land," Rowan said. Her voice was calm. It had to be. Inside, she could feel the old training kicking in the mental clock she had learned to wind without thinking. 2 minutes to total collapse, she said. Another minute or two before his heart stops. That is if his heart is as healthy as his file says. "This operation has a chain of command," Reddick said. "You are not in it." On the radio, clipped to his vest, Hartley let out a sound that did not belong in anyone's lungs, a harsh, high-pitched choke. Tessa's voice came through tight and close to the edge. "His lips are purple," she said. "He is grabbing at his neck. Sir, please." Rowan shifted her kit in her hand. "If you want to write me up after this, you can," she said. "If you want to fire me, you can. If you keep me standing out here while you quote protocol at me and we watch him die on 6 different cameras, that is on you." Reddick stepped closer, close enough that she could see tiny flecks of dust on his collar. "This is my operation," he said. "You do not get to make that call." "I am not the one choking on my own blood on a catwalk," Rowan said. They stared at each other. The rotor thump of the inbound helicopter floated in from far away, still faint. On the radio, Hartley stopped making words. Only a soft gurgling came through. Somewhere in the yard, someone shouted for more supports, more hands. Reddick's jaw worked once. "If you go in there and you do anything beyond basic stabilization," he said, "your contract is terminated immediately. No review, no appeal." Rowan did not look away. "Move," she said. For a second, it seemed like he might hold his ground. Then he took half a step to the side. She was already moving. The gravel shifted under her boots. The weight of the kit bit into her shoulder. Inside the plant, the air was thicker. Dust hung in the beams of the entryway lights. Old oil and rust and the faint chemical tang of training smoke hit the back of her throat. "Alpha position," she called into her headset as she put it back on. "North side catwalk above main floor," Nate answered. His voice shook from effort. "Stairwell is gone. We are on what is left." Another stair on the east wall looked intact. Rowan headed for it at a run. Her boots clanged on the steps, the metal flexed but held. At the top, she cut across a short length of catwalk to where a cluster of bodies huddled around a collapsed section. The floor there had dropped in a shallow V. A twisted support beam lay angled across it. Hartley sat half-propped against the bent railing, the beam wedged over his rib cage. His face looked waxen under the grime. Sweat had cut pale tracks through the dust on his forehead. "Make room," Rowan said. They shifted aside. Nate backed up a step, chest heaving. Hartley's eyes found her and tried to focus. "Doc," he said. The word came out as a broken puff of air with almost no sound. Rowan dropped to her knees. She unbuckled his vest straps, with quick fingers peeled the plates away enough to expose his chest. The right side bulged subtly with each forced inhale. The left struggled to keep up. She set her palm flat against his sternum and felt the unequal rise. She pressed her fingers lightly along the line of his trachea and felt the shift off-center. "Tension pneumothorax," she said. "He needs decompression now." Her hands knew what to do. She snapped open her kit, found a 14-gauge needle with catheter, tore the wrapper with her teeth. The plastic crinkled loud in her ears. She palpated for the second intercostal space on the affected side. Fingers on the clavicle, 2 ribs down, mid-clavicular line. The skin there was slick with sweat and dust. "Big breath if you can," she said. Hartley tried. The attempt almost folded him in half. She pushed the needle in over the top of the rib, not under. Firm, steady pressure, the resistance of skin, the thin give of muscle. Then a sudden release into the chest cavity. A hiss of trapped air burst out around the hub. It was a small sound in the big, sick echo of the plant, but it was the sound she had been waiting for. Hartley gasped. This time the air went somewhere it could be used. His chest rose more evenly. The purple at the edges of his mouth began to soften back toward gray. She slid the catheter off the needle and left it in place, taping it down with quick strips from a roll in her kit. "Pulse," she said. Nate pressed 2 fingers to Hartley's neck. Stronger, he said. Still fast, but stronger. The helicopter noise was louder now, the chop of the blades more distinct. Get this beam off him, Rowan said. Careful. 2 agents took positions on either end. On her count, they lifted muscles straining. The beam shifted enough for Hartley to slide free with help from Nate and Tessa. He grunted as pressure left his chest, then winced as his back hit the iron grating. Pain is fine, Rowan said. Pain means your brain is still online. Talk to me. Name. Ben, he said. The word came out clearer. Hartley. Where are you? She asked. Red Ridge Steel, he said, breathing between each word. Catwalk. Too high for my taste. A small laugh rippled through the circle, a thin, shaky relief. Good, she said. You can be afraid of heights as long as you can say it in full sentences. The medevac team reached them 5 minutes later. 2 flight medics in green flight suits and helmets crouched at Hartley's side. Who placed the needle? One asked, eyes flicking to the catheter at Hartley's chest. I did, Rowan. Rowan, He nodded. Textbook, Yassi, he said. You bought us some time. They packaged Hartley onto a backboard, checked. Tessa's legs shone a light briefly in Eric's pupils. Then they maneuvered Hartley and Tessa back across the catwalk toward the more stable stairs, calling out their steps. Rowan watched until they disappeared down the metal run. Her own breath felt steady. Her hands had a light tremor now that the task was over a delayed echo. She curled them briefly into fists, then let them go. We will get you to the medic truck, she said to Eric. You do not sleep until someone with a license tells you to. He gave a weak thumbs up. Back in the yard, the helicopter lifted off in a wash of wind and grit. The rotor wash tugged at Rowan's vest. She raised an arm to shield her eyes until the aircraft banked away. Reddick waited near the command truck. Patterson stood a few steps behind him, expression careful. Rowan took her headset off completely and let it hang around her neck. The noise from the yard faded enough that she could hear the crunch of her own footsteps on the gravel. Reddick's face was pale except for 2 bright spots of color high along his cheekbones. You disobeyed a direct order, he said. I saved an agent's life, Rowan said. You compromised operational integrity, Yo, he said. You left your assigned position. You entered an active site without clearance. You performed an invasive procedure outside your authorized scope. Rowan set the kit down at her feet. Ben Hartley had a tension pneumothorax, she said. His lung collapsed. Pressure was building against his heart. Medevac landed 6 minutes after I decompressed his chest. That is 6 minutes he did not have. Reddick's expression did not change. You are not the one who gets to decide that calculus, he said. Somebody had to, she said. The yard had gone quieter. Nearby conversations had stuttered and thinned. People were watching without obviously watching. Patterson shifted as if he might speak, then did not. Reddick held out his hand. Your credentials, he said. Contractor status is terminated effective immediately. Rowan reached up and unclipped her badge. The plastic felt warm from her body heat. She set it in his palm. He closed his fingers around it. You will be escorted off Academy grounds once we return, he said. She met his eyes. Ben walks out of a hospital because someone cut through their fear and did what needed to be done, she said. If that is incompatible with your idea of this place, that is your choice. She picked up her kit and turned away. On her way to the parking area, she passed Nate and Tessa. They stood together near a stack of gear crates, faces drawn close, still dusted in the fine powder from the collapse. Ma'am, Nate said. She slowed. How is he? Tessa asked. Breathing, Rowan said. He knew his name when they took him up. That is as much as anyone gets today. They looked like they wanted to say more. They did not. Rowan reached her truck, tossed the kit onto the passenger seat, and climbed in. The engine turned over on the first try. Gravel crunched under the tires as she pulled out. In the side mirror, the steel plant shrank, then slid out of view. In the command truck, long after she had left the lot, the monitor still cycled through recorded feeds. On one of the screens frozen in a paused frame, a gloved hand held a needle at just the right angle above a dirt-streaked chest. The bright green timestamp marking the 43 seconds that had changed everything for one man on a broken catwalk. The first night, Rowan slept only in pieces. She woke with the shape of the catwalk still behind her eyes, the beam across Hartley's chest, the feeling of the needle going through artificial skin that was not artificial this time. The numbers on the bedside clock kept finding their way to her attention. 2:14, 3:06, 4:21. By morning she gave up. Her apartment in Aurora was small and functional. 1 couch, 1 table, a bed, a narrow galley kitchen. A moving box sat half unpacked in the corner, a duffel slumped open beside it like it had given up spilling its contents. She ran. The cold hit her lungs as she stepped outside, the air sharp with frost. Her breath smoked in front of her as she fell into a steady pace along the sidewalk. Her feet knew the loop by now, past the dark windows of a closed laundromat, a park with bare trees, a strip mall waking up one fluorescent rectangle at a time. She ran until the tightness in her chest shifted from something heavy to something clean. When she came back, the sky had lightened from black to the first thin blue. The phone on her kitchen counter showed 3 missed calls from unknown numbers and 1 voicemail icon. She set its screen down and made coffee. The smell filled the space without touching the knot in her stomach. The second day looked much like the first. She moved between the couch and the window and the kitchen, not settling anywhere. She opened the Red Ridge folder, closed it, opened it again. The diagrams were already memorized. Lines of catwalks, the circle around the bad stairwell. She did not listen to the voicemail. On the morning of the 3rd day, her phone rang, before the sun had fully cleared the horizon. She almost let it go. At the last ring, she picked up. Hale. Dr. Hale, this is Marianne Cole. Cole's voice was brisk, but there was a roughness under it, as if she had spent the last 2 days on the phone. I know you have no formal obligation to answer bureau calls right now, Cole said, but I need you to listen. Rowan leaned her hip against the edge of the counter. I am listening, she said. Director Monroe has suspended your termination, Cole said. She has called for a formal review of the incident at Red Ridge. She wants you on site for that review. Rowan let the information land in stages. Suspended, review, wants you. I have been fired, she said. Reddick took my credentials out of my hand. Elaine is the one who signs the contracts, Cole said. Samuel is not. There was paper rustling on the other end of the line. Special Agent Ortiz submitted a report with supporting body cam footage and independent medical opinions, Cole said. The director viewed it yesterday. She has questions. Rowan looked at the clock over her stove. 7:12. When? She said. 10:00, Cole said. Administration Building, 4th floor, conference room 3. The call ended with a soft click. Rowan stood for a few seconds with the phone still in her hand. The coffee machine gurgled behind her, finishing its cycle. The smell rose around her. She showered, dressed in the only clean shirt and blazer that still felt like they fit this version of her life, and drove back toward the academy. The highway slipped by under her gray lanes and white dashes stretching into foothills dark with trees. Security at the main gate checked her ID, cross-referenced a list, and handed her a visitor badge. Clip that where they can see it, the guard said. 4th floor is open to you. The elevator ride up felt longer than it was. On the 4th floor, the carpet was thicker, the lighting softer. Framed photographs here were not of recruits in formation, but of handshakes and ceremonies, plaques, and awards. Cole waited outside a set of double doors, a folder tucked under one arm. How is Hartley? Were the first words out of Rowan's mouth. Holding his own, Cole said. Chest tube went in clean, no significant residual damage. They extubated him this morning. Some of the tightness in Rowan's chest loosened. And Ruiz, Rowan said. Hairline fracture, Cole said. Crutches for a bit. Park has a mild concussion and a headache the size of Kansas. She looked Rowan over once like she was checking pupil reaction. You ready? Cole asked. What happens in there? Rowan said. Elaine watches, Cole said. Samuel talks, Ortiz talks, you talk. The evidence sits where it sits. She pushed the door open. The conference room was long and bright with windows on the one side looking out over the training grounds. A single large table ran down the center. At the far end, Director Elaine Monroe sat with an open laptop and a legal pad. Silver threaded her dark hair. Her suit was simple and perfectly cut. She had the posture of someone used to people looking at her when she spoke. On her right sat Samuel Reddick, jaw tight, a stack of printed documents in front of him. On her left, a man in a dark suit Rowan did not recognize, likely legal. Ortiz occupied a chair midway down the table, his laptop already wired to the wall screen behind Monroe. Cole took a seat near him. Dr. Hale, Monroe said, thank you for coming on short notice. Director, Garker, Rowan said. She sat where Cole indicated, directly across from Ortiz. Monroe folded her hands on the table. We are here to review the events at Red Ridge, she said. I have read Deputy Director Reddick's report, Dr. Cole's statement, Agent Ortiz's incident brief, and the attached medical opinions. Before we look at any footage, I would like to hear what happened in your words, starting from the moment the stairwell collapsed. Rowan could hear her own pulse, a faint rhythm in her ears. She laid her palms flat against her knees under the table, grounding herself in the pressure of her own weight. Alpha Team was moving up the south stairwell, she said. Hartley's stack led. The stairs gave way under them. I saw the collapse on the body cams. She kept her voice even. There was no need to add anything that did not matter. After the dust cleared, she said, I saw Agent Hartley pinned under a steel beam across the chest. His respirations were rapid and shallow. On the feed, the right side of his chest rose less than the left. His skin color shifted to cyanotic around the lips. His trachea appeared deviated on camera. She glanced at Ortiz. He was not typing, he was just listening. I informed command that Hartley was showing signs of tension pneumothorax, Rowan said. I requested permission to enter the structure and perform decompression. Command denied that request and instructed me to remain in the truck and wait for medevac. Monroe's expression did not change, but her pen moved once on the pad a small note. ETA for medevac at that point was 12 minutes, Rowan said. Hartley's observed condition suggested he had 2 or 3 minutes before cardiac arrest. She let that sentence sit for a beat. I considered the instructions from command against his likely survivability if we stayed on plant, she said. I chose to enter the structure. Reddick shifted. You disobeyed a direct order, he said. Monroe held up a hand without looking at him. You will have room to speak, Samuel, she said. Let her finish. Rowan continued. I reached Hartley's position, she said. Patient, she said. Confirmed signs of tension, pneumothorax through physical assessment. I performed needle decompression using a 14-gauge catheter at the second intercostal space midclavicular line. There was immediate release of air and improvement in his respiratory effort. His color improved. His pulse strengthened. She remembered the hiss of air the way his chest had finally risen under her palm. The details stayed behind her eyes. Medevacs arrived approximately 6 minutes later, she said. Hartley was transported to the trauma facility with a patent airway and restored hemodynamics. She closed her mouth. The silence that followed did not feel empty. It felt like a space where something was being weighed. Thank you, Monroe said. She turned to Reddick. Deputy Director, your report states that Agent Hartley was stable at the time of Dr. Hale's intervention and that her actions were unnecessary and potentially dangerous. Do you stand by that characterization? I do, Kisig, Reddick said. This was a training environment, not an active combat zone. Hartley's distress was serious but not immediately life-threatening. Medevacs were minutes out. Hale's choice to enter the structure and perform an invasive procedure outside scope undermined the chain of command and exposed the Bureau to risk. Monroe watched him as he spoke, her face unreadable. Agent Ortiz, she said when he was done, show us the footage. Ortiz turned to his laptop. The wall screen flickered, then filled with the view from Nate's body camera. The collapse played out again. Dust shouts the shaking frame. Hartley pinned beam across his chest, his mouth working for air that did not land. The audio in the room belonged to that moment now. The faint building noise dropped away. Rowan watched Tessa's gloved hand touch Hartley's shoulder. She heard her own voice on the recording. Command, this is medical. Hartley is showing signs of tension pneumothorax. The camera angle shifted between feeds. From Nate's point of view, from Hartley's from the fixed lens, mounted high on a support column, each angle showed the same thing. Skin changing color, chest rising unevenly, small muscles at the neck straining with each effort to pull in air. The footage cut to Rowan running up the intact stairwell. The view from her helmet cam was steady despite the climb, the metal clang of her boots echoing in the audio. Ortiz let it run without commentary. They watched her drop beside Hartley, hands moving without hesitation. Vest straps, shirt, palpation, the needle entering the chest, the hiss clear even over the comm static, Hartley's first real inhale after. On the recording, one of the flight medics said, "Whoever did this bought us some time." Ortiz paused the video. 3 seconds ticked by. I had the Red Ridge footage reviewed by 3 independent trauma surgeons, Ortiz said. They all agree that Agent Hartley met clinical criteria for tension pneumothorax. They agree that absent immediate decompression, he was minutes away from cardiac arrest. They agree that medevac unlikely would have arrived in time for successful resuscitation. He tapped a key. The screen split, showing short written statements from each doctor, names and credentials visible. Monroe read, eyes moving quickly. Deputy Director, she said after a moment, do you dispute these assessments? I dispute the idea that a contractor with a history of insubordination should be making unilateral decisions in the middle of a live operation, Reddick said. We have protocols for a reason. If every medical support officer starts cutting into people the way they see fit, we no longer have a chain of command, we have chaos. He looked at Rowan. You were brought here to teach basic field medicine and observe training, he said, not to play savior on a catwalk. Cole's fingers tightened slightly around the pen she held. She did not speak. Rowan felt the old heat rise under her skin. She kept her voice level. I was brought here because I have experience keeping people alive when conditions are bad, Bao, she said. That is what I did. You can rationalize this any way you want, Reddick said, but the simple fact is you ignored a direct instruction, again. Monroe's gaze shifted between them, then settled on Rowan. In your Army file, Monroe said, the discharge documentation uses that same word, insubordination. She glanced at Ortiz. After reading Agent Ortiz's report, I requested the intelligence community's internal review of Operation Lionsgate, she said, the one not included in your court-martial packet. Her eyes returned to Rowan. It describes your refusal to evacuate as a critical factor in preserving an asset whose information led to disruption of multiple hostile operations, she said. The officer who ordered you out was later reassigned based on that decision. The conference room seemed to narrow around that statement. You lost your commission and your career as a result, Monroe said. He moved to a desk. Rowan did not respond. There was nothing in that arrangement of facts that surprised her. Hearing it aloud still landed heavier than reading it could have. Monroe shifted her attention back to Reddick. At Red Ridge, your report minimized the severity of Agent Hartley's condition and framed Dr. Hale's intervention as grandstanding, she said. The footage and the medical opinions suggest otherwise. Reddick sat straighter. I framed it in the context of policy, he said. We cannot have personnel deciding which orders they will follow based on personal conviction. Personal conviction, Monroe said, or professional assessment. Reddick did not answer. Cole spoke for the first time. Elaine, she said, if we had left Hartley on that floor and waited for the helicopter, we would be having a different conversation today. The legal counsel cleared his throat softly. For the record, he said, liability exposure is higher when an organization is found to have had the means and knowledge to prevent a death and failed to act than when trained personnel act within their competence to preserve life, even if that action deviates from protocol. Monroe let that hang in the air. Dr. Hale, she said, do you believe you acted within your competence? Yes, Rowan said. Do you believe a medic in your position with your training would have been negligent to wait? Rowan thought of the way Hartley had looked, the color sliding out of his face, the feel of his chest under her hand. Yes, she said. Monroe nodded once. Your termination is rescinded, she said. Effective immediately, the prior dismissal from contract will be struck and replaced with a notation of pending review resolved in your favor. She tapped the pen against her notepad, once a small sound. I am not interested in punishing people for saving my agents, she said. I am interested in making sure more of them come home breathing. She turned slightly toward Cole. Dr. Cole and I have discussed the current state of our tactical medicine training, she said. Red Ridge made it clear there are gaps between what is on paper and what the field demands. Her gaze returned to Rowan. I am offering you a permanent position as head of tactical medicine at this academy, she said. You will design and implement a revised curriculum for field medical training. You will report to Dr. Cole for clinical oversight and to me for program outcomes. Deputy Director Reddick will not have veto power over your course content. Reddick's head came up. This is a mistake, he said. You are rewarding disrespect for the chain of command. I am recognizing effective action under pressure, Monroe said. Her tone had not changed, but it carried an edge now. You are free to note your objection in writing, she said. I will attach it to the file. The legal counsel made a quick scribble on his pad. Rowan sat very still. The words head of tactical medicine felt unreal in the air between them. You would have authority to adjust training scenarios and medical contingencies, Monroe said. You would have access to simulation facilities and budget input for equipment that supports the protocols you teach. Cole's mouth curved just slightly. You have 48 hours to decide, Ureste, Monroe said. Agent Ortiz will send you the formal offer. She closed her laptop. The gesture signaled the end of the official part of the meeting more clearly than any gavel. One more thing, she said. I visited Hartley this morning. He is aware of what happened on that catwalk. He asked me to tell you he is glad you did not listen. Something in Rowan's chest shifted at that. Not release exactly. Something more like a knot loosening one loop. Monroe stood, so did the others. Reddick gathered his papers with sharp movements, the edges snapping together. He did not look at Rowan as he left. Cole came around the table, folder still in hand. I told you not to give him ammunition, she said. I did not, Rowan said. I gave him evidence. Cole snorted softly. Take the 48 hours, she said. Sign it sooner if your fingers cannot wait. When they were gone, the room felt larger again. The windows showed the training grounds where small figures moved through obstacle courses, the lines they ran tracing paths someone had drawn years before. Ortiz disconnected his laptop and slid it into his bag. He lingered by the table instead of leaving immediately. You all right? He asked. Rowan looked at the spot on the wall where Hartley's frozen image had been a few minutes earlier. I expected to walk in here and hear why I was done, she said. You still can't, Ortiz said. You just have to say no. He tapped the folder in front of her. You will not, he added. You sound very sure, she said. I have watched enough people fold to recognize the ones who do not, he said. He pulled a separate envelope from his bag and set it beside the folder. These are copies of the trauma surgeon's opinions, he said, and the internal review from Lionsgate for your records. She rested her hand on the paper. It crackled faintly under her palm. Thank you, she said. You did the thing the system hired you to do, he said. The fact that it took a near miss and a lot of video to admit it is their problem. He straightened. Whatever you decide about the offer, he said, if you ever need the footage again, you know where to find me. He left her there with the folder, the envelope, and the echo of Hartley's ragged breath turning into something steadier in her memory. The clock on the wall read 11:17. The numbers changed to 11:18 while she sat and watched the light move across the floor. That afternoon, alone in her apartment, she read through the offer line by line. Job title. Duties. Chain of reporting. Salary that made her blink. A paragraph about academic freedom within operational parameters. A note at the bottom with Monroe's initials and a handwritten addition that said simply, build what we actually need. The envelope from Ortiz lay open beside it. The words on the pages inside were clinical, precise, and personal. They described her decisions in terms of outcomes, percentages, probabilities. They did not mention the smell of dust or the sound of a man trying to breathe through a chest full of air that had nowhere to go. She signed the last page of the offer with a simple stroke of her pen. Her hand did not shake. The next morning, she walked down a different hallway at the academy. The sign on the frosted glass door read Tactical Medicine Unit. Underneath in smaller letters, Dr. Rowan Hale. The office inside was small. A desk, 2 chairs, an empty bookshelf, a window that looked out toward the medical training bay. On the desk sat a stack of existing curriculum binders and a key ring with tags she did not recognize yet. She set her bag down, stood for a moment without moving, and then opened the top binder. Half an hour later, a knock sounded at the doorframe. Nate leaned in one hand on the jamb. Tessa stood just behind him, shoulder to the wall. We heard, Nate said. Rowan rapped her knuckles once on the binder. Word travels fast, she said. We wanted to know if you are taking students, Tessa said. We already did that experiment, Rowan said. You survived. Nate shifted his weight. Not just us, he said. Park Chen, a couple of the others. They want in if you are building something new. Rowan took them in. The way they held themselves had changed. There were still traces of rawness of youth, but something about their posture said they knew more now about where the line between training and real stood. Bring them, she said. Tomorrow, 0600. The drills get harder from here. They both smiled, brief and real. Yes, ma'am, Nate said. After they left, she turned back to the binder. Pages of text described standard responses to scenarios that did not always match the way bones and flesh behaved under stress. She reached for a pen and drew a line through a paragraph that listed medevac as the primary intervention for compromised airways. Beside it, she wrote 3 words in small block letters. Teach them this. Outside on the training grounds, a whistle blew. A group of recruits started to run feet, hitting the track in a rhythm that sounded like a clock counting off seconds. Snow was melting in streaks along the edge of the academy track when Rowan stepped into the boardroom again. This one was smaller than the director's conference room with a round table instead of a long one. The windows looked out over the medical training wing. A muted television in the corner showed a news channel with the sound off. On the table in front of her, a laptop displayed a slide full of numbers. The board members settled into their seats. Elaine Monroe sat at the far side, Dr. Cole beside her. 2 other administrators, one in his 60s with a rigid spine, and another younger with an open notebook filled the remaining chairs. You have the room, Dr. Hale, Monroe said. Rowan clicked to the next slide. We have run the revised tactical medicine curriculum for 6 months, she said. 4 classes through the full program, 80 agents total, Graphs appeared on the wall screen, clean lines against a white background, time on the horizontal, percentages on the vertical. In that period, Rowan said, graduates of the program have been primary responders in 5 incidents involving penetrating trauma and airway compromise. Pre-program survival in comparable cases was 62%. In these 5 cases, survival was 100%. The older administrator leaned forward. His nameplate read Hawkins. These were domestic operations, he said. Yes, Rowan said. Denver, Phoenix, Albuquerque, and 2 in the Chicago field office. Details are in your packets. She kept her voice plain. The numbers were the story: a bullet in an alley in Phoenix, a crushed chest under a collapsed porch in Chicago, a car wreck on black ice just outside Denver, where a bystander with a broken collarbone had been the one to call for help. What changed? The younger administrator asked. Specifics. We stopped treating medevac as the first solution, Rowan said. We started teaching agents to treat the first 5 minutes as theirs instead of as a waiting room. Needle decompression, surgical airways, real hemorrhage control, triage under fire. We drilled until they could do it with adrenaline in their system and mud on their hands. She clicked again. The slide shifted to a series of still images. Gloves streaked red, a tourniquet cinched high on a thigh, a paramedic shaking his head and mouthing the words, "Who taught you that?" on a blurred body cam frame. No agent exceeded their clinical training, Rowan said. All actions were within accepted trauma practice. The difference is now they have more than bandages and hope. Hawkins drummed 2 fingers lightly on the table. There is concern, he said, that encouraging agents to make independent medical judgments in the field could lead to confusion about authority in a crisis. Rowan met his eyes. If their medical judgment conflicts with a tactical order they call their medic lead on comms, she said, if that lead is me, I will tell them whether to cut or not. That is not confusion. That is a chain extended to cover the situations protocols did not anticipate. Cole gave a small nod. Monroe watched Rowan and then looked to Hawkins. The question is not whether the program is perfect, Monroe said. The question is whether it keeps more of our people alive. Hawkins glanced at the charts one more time. His shoulder shifted, the kind of movement a man made when the numbers in front of him left little room to maneuver. I moved that the tactical medicine unit become a permanent program, he said, required for all field agents. The younger administrator said second. The vote took less than a minute. Hands up one after another. No one objected aloud. If Reddick had thoughts, he kept them to himself. He was not in the room. Monroe closed her folder. Motion carries, she said. Dr. Hale, you will receive an updated charter and budget allocation by the end of the week. Rowan nodded once. Thank you, she said. Monroe's mouth eased just slightly. Do not thank us, she said. You build something that works, we catch up. It was not praise, it landed somewhere better. Outside in the corridor, Cole caught Rowan's arm. You just became a line item with a title, Cole said. That matters. Rowan looked toward the glass wall that overlooked the training bay. Through it, she could see figures moving around practice tables, blue gloves flashing. It matters if it gets through their hands and into the field, she said. She said. Then keep putting it there, Cole said. Spring turned to summer. The days stretched long, then began to shorten again. The tactical medicine unit grew into its new shape. The training bay looked different now. The old mannequins had been replaced with newer models that bled simulated blood when cut, that could swell and change color, that had lungs, which rose and fell under the right hands. Cabinets held pre-packed cricothyrotomy kits, labeled in clear block letters. The walls bore laminated diagrams of airway landmarks and hemorrhage control zones. Nate Collins moved through the space with a clipboard and a whistle. His name badge now read Senior Tactical Medic, the ink barely dry. He ran drills the way he had once run squads, voice carrying just enough to be heard over the noise of air compressors, and shouted patient handoffs. Again, he told a group of recruits practicing tourniquets on each other. 30 seconds or less, high and tight. If they can still feel their toes, you did not pull hard enough. Tessa Ruiz came in less often. Her assignment with a field team in Denver kept her on the road. When she did appear, it was usually with a story and sometimes with a scar. "You would have liked this one," she said one afternoon, swinging herself up to sit on the edge of a table. Her leg brace was gone, a faint white line traced along her shin now where the fracture had been. "House fire out in Arvada," she said. "Roof caved in. Neighbor went in to help, got pinned. Chest crush, labored breathing trachea shift. The local EMS was 10 out. We were 2 in." She described the needle in the cold air, the hiss, the look on the firefighter's face when his lungs opened up again. "We got him out before the second floor came down," she said. Rowan listened. She did not say good job. She did not need to. It was there in the way Tessa told it, in the way her hands demonstrated the cut, without thinking about it. Eric Park moved into advanced airway training. He stood at the head of a table while a line of recruits watched him slide a tube into a mannequin's artificial trachea. 41 seconds, Nate called out, looking at the stopwatch on his wrist. Eric grinned, flushed with a quiet satisfaction that had not been there in the commissary months ago. When he caught Rowan watching, he gave a small shrug. "Turns out I do fine as long as no one is dropping a building on my head," he said. "Good to know your thresholds," Rowan said. News of the program did not stay inside the academy walls. Emails arrived. A request from the Phoenix field office for a condensed version of the course. A question from a training coordinator in New York about adapting the material for joint operations with local police. A note from a paramedic in Chicago who had seen the new techniques in action and wanted to sit in on a class. Then there was the one from Cole that had a different weight. Subject line DOD inquiry. Rowan opened it at her desk. The message was short. "Department of Defense is standing up a review of combat medic training. They want you to consult. 3 days at the Pentagon, initial brief only. Interested." Beneath it, Cole had added a single line. "They know your file. They called anyway." Rowan stared at the words for a long moment. Her hands rested on either side of the keyboard, fingers slightly curled. She typed back, "I will go if I have full latitude to speak to protocol gaps, not just to what they already do." Cole replied within 10 minutes, "You will." Director Monroe cleared it. 2 weeks later, Rowan stepped through a set of metal detectors in a building where the walls were thicker, the doors heavier, and the flags larger. The briefing room at the Pentagon was colder than the Academy boardroom. Air conditioning hummed behind the walls. A long table sat under recessed lights. Uniformed officers filled the chairs, rows of ribbons on their chests, rank pins catching the light. A projector cast her slides onto the front wall. "Good morning," she said. Some of the faces looking back at her were young, some deeply lined. Not all were Army. Navy and Air Force uniforms stood out in the line. "Our data at the Academy shows that when we train field personnel to manage critical airways and hemorrhage in the first 5 minutes, survival improves," she said. "Your own trauma registries suggest similar potential if you push more autonomy forward." She clicked to a slide that charted battlefield thoracic mortality over 15 years. Despite advances in surgical care and evacuation, she said mortality from chest injuries plateaued. Colored lines flattened across the graph. "Part of that is physics," she said. "Part is training." A colonel in the front row lifted his hand. "Dr. Hale," he said, "these protocols you are suggesting would empower combat medics and even some line personnel to perform invasive procedures on their own authority." He had a short, precise haircut and a stack of service stripes. His name tape read K-Line. "That raises questions about scope of practice and liability," she said. Rowan nodded. "It does," she said. "It also raises survival by, in our observed sample, 18%. She let that number stand. "We are not talking about untrained improvisation," she said. "We are talking about rigorous training, clear indications, and defined stop points. You are already asking these people to decide whether someone lives or dies based on where they put a tourniquet. This is the same logic applied to the chest and neck." Another officer, a Navy commander with sharp eyes, spoke up. "Your service record includes a dishonorable discharge," he said. "How did you come to be in charge of a federal training program with that on your file?" The question did not surprise her. It still landed with a specific weight in the quiet room. I refused to evacuate during an operation in Afghanistan, she said. Ashul said, my team had orders to pull out. A local interpreter, Farid Navid, had been hit while covering our retreat. I stayed operated and kept him alive long enough for extraction. She kept her voice even as she said his name. Internal review later concluded that his intelligence network yielded information that prevented an attack on a convoy and led to the capture of 3 high-value targets, she said. The officer who ordered the evacuation was reassigned. I received the discharge. She did not add anything else. The silence that followed did not ask for it. You do not have to take my word for the value of these protocols, she said. You have your own cases, your own dead, your own near misses. Train your people to act in that space or continue to let that window close empty. The briefing continued. Some questions were skeptical, some pragmatic. A few were quietly supportive. When it ended, a cluster of officers approached her at the front of the room. Klein was the first. We will need to adjust policies, he said. But there is sense in what you are showing us. The Navy commander waited until the others had drifted away. I read the unredacted review of Lionsgate, he said. Someone should have said out loud long before now that what happened to you was a misallocation of consequences. Rowan shrugged one shoulder. I'm not here to fix that, she said. I am here because there are people still out there with chest tubes in their hands and no training. Both can be true, he said. In the hallway outside, Ortiz stood with 2 cups of coffee, one in each hand, leaning against a wall under a framed photograph of a carrier group. Thought you might want one that does not taste like it was brewed from shoe leather, he said. She took the nearer cup. How did you get on this side of the river? She asked. Interagency task force meeting, he said. Terrorism, joint operations, the usual cheerful subjects. They walked along the corridor together. The floors gleamed. The air smelled faintly of wax and old paper. Word from Monroe is that a Senate subcommittee wants you to testify next month, he said. Emergency medical response in federal operations. Rowan sipped the coffee. It was too hot and a little bitter, but it beat the machine in the academy break room. I am not a lobbyist, she said. Good, Ortiz said. They have enough of those. He glanced over. They want what you already did in that boardroom, just with cameras and longer tables, he said. Numbers cases, what went wrong and what went right. Rowan thought about the way Hartley's chest had looked under that beam, the way Tessa's voice had sounded when she said his lips are purple. They are not going to want to hear about blood on the floor, she said. They do not have to like it, Ortiz said. They just have to have it in the record. They parted ways at the security checkpoint. Back at the academy, life slid back into its pattern. Drills, briefings, paperwork. A pile of equipment requisitions on Rowan's desk that needed signatures and budget codes. Training schedules that had to be rearranged when someone in admin decided a different module was more important for a week. Some evenings after the official schedule ended, the lights in the tactical medicine bay stayed on. Rowan stood at the side of the room while a new crop of recruits practiced needle decompressions. The soft pop of plastic being pierced and the hiss of expelled air sounded in a steady rhythm. Nate walked between tables correcting grip and angle. Your fingers are eyes, he told them. If you do not see the rib, you will stab it. Eric ran a parallel station working through airway adjuncts. Chen, quieter but more confident now, supervised chest seals. On a Tuesday afternoon, an email popped up from an address tagged Hartley Benjamin. Subject line guest spot, he wrote in plain sentences. They have me running a tactical response workshop next week, he said. Director suggested I invite someone from medical to talk through Red Ridge from your angle. Figured I would go to the source. He ended with a line that made her pause. If you are willing to stand in front of the room and tell them what you saw. When you looked at me on that floor, I think they should hear it. She typed back. I will be there. The following Thursday, she stood at the back of a classroom while Hartley told a room full of agents about structural assessment and the difference between a sound stairwell and one that only looked like it might hold. His chest rose evenly under his shirt. A faint scar peeked above his collar when he turned his head. When he finished, he motioned to her. Most of you know Dr. Hale, he said. You probably heard some version of what happened at Red Ridge. You are going to hear the version from the person who had her hand next to my heart While everyone else was waiting for the bird, Rowan walked to the front. The room went quiet. She did not tell them what they owed her. She told them what a tension pneumothorax looked like and sounded like what it did inside the body. She told them how fast his color had changed and how long it had taken her to reach him from the truck. She told them that the metal under her knees had been cold through her pants. When she finished, one of the younger agents raised his hand. "Would you do it again?" he asked. She thought of the stairwell in Sangur, the dirt, the blood, the noise. Fareed on a cot that was not meant for surgery, Hartley on a catwalk in Colorado, air-trapped where it did not belong. "Yes," she said. He nodded as if that was the answer he had expected and needed to hear. That night, long after the building had emptied, the training bay sat quiet. The tables were wiped down. The mannequins rested under sheets. The only light came from a strip over the storage cabinets. Rowan sat on the edge of a practice table with her phone in her hand. The screen lit her face. A new message had arrived an hour earlier from a foreign number she did not recognize. "This is Fareed Naveed, the interpreter from Sangur. Agent Ortiz helped me find a way to contact you." She had read the first line 3 times before breathing properly again. The rest of the message weighted words in careful English. "I heard about your work at the academy," he wrote. "I wanted to say thank you, not only for staying when they told you to go, but for making sure what you did for me was not buried as a mistake." He went on. "I live in Europe now," he wrote. "I have a family, a daughter. She is 3. We named her Rowan." Her vision blurred for a moment. She blinked hard. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard. "You do not owe me anything," she typed and erased. She settled on something else. "You are the one who survived," she wrote. "I just bought you some time." The dots appeared, then another line. "You bought me a life," he wrote. She let the phone go dark and sat there, the cool of the table seeping through her pants. The hum of the fluorescent strip overhead filled the room. After a while, she slid off the table and crossed to one of the cabinets. Inside, neatly stacked, were training neck models. She picked one up and turned it in her hands. The synthetic skin was smooth. The ridge of the cricoid cartilage was exactly where it should be. She set it on a table and laid her fingers along the curve, eyes closed. Thyroid cartilage, membrane, cricoid. Outside through the high windows, she could see a sliver of the track. Under the lights, a late group of recruits ran laps, their footfalls rising in a steady rhythm. To her, it sounded like a line of seconds, each one a small chance waiting to be used. The next morning at 0600, the bay filled with another class. They stood in a half circle, some still rubbing sleep from their eyes, others already wired with nerves. Rowan stepped to the front. "People like to talk about the golden hour," she said. "In this work, what you really have is the first 5 minutes. That is yours. What you do with it or do not do is the difference between whether someone goes home or does not." She moved to the nearest table, laid a hand on the neck model. "You are going to learn how to own those minutes," she said. "Not with big speeches, with what you can do with these." She held up her hands. They were steady. She reached out and took the hand of the recruit closest to her, a young woman whose name badge read Singh. Rowan placed Singh's fingers on the model's landmarks, guiding them. "Feel that, she said. "That is where you start." The room smelled like antiseptic and coffee. The lights hummed. Outside somewhere, the world kept throwing up reasons to know exactly where to put a blade and how deep to go. Inside, under her hands and theirs, the knowledge passed along in small, precise movements, one line at a time. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.